Now, there you go. I am now with another voice of reason. I like to think it's a voice of reason. I'm very pleased to say I'm here with Connor Tomlinson, Head of Research at British Conservation Alliance. What is that, Connor, and hello?
Well, good evening, Nick. The British Conservation Alliance is basically a non-profit group who tell the government, hey, you're spending a little bit too much money on some of the green nonsense. We're conservationists, not environmentalists, so we don't think the sky is falling, but we do think, hey, the businesses can reduce things like pollution and get Britain energy independence so we're not so reliant on China and Russia.
Yeah, well, I can't argue with any of that. So where do I sign up? So that's the good news. Okay. In a way, I think conservation is a much more compelling argument than telling us we've all got to go green and get net zero. We're conserving now. And do you know why? Because suddenly we're understanding the price of energy and we're starting to look at ourselves and say, do you know what? I don't want to spend all this money on energy. We're probably going to achieve the green agenda when it's got nothing to do with the government's policies, really. We'll probably do it voluntarily, won't we? Because our instinct is to conserve.
The hilarious thing is when you hear from the Greta Thunberg types that Britain has an original sin for the Industrial Revolution. We're the one that unleashed fossil fuels on the planet. I mean, people don't really think. Still in a lot of African countries, I spoke to one of the MPs in Malawi who said, we need strategies to stop burning wood because it's costing the lives of thousands of children every year from indoor pollution. But it's only because we stopped burning wood and started burning fossil fuels that Britain has these beautiful forests all over the world. So, of course, conservation is in the interest of not just Britain, but the sort of conservative free market values we have always had. And I think only a common sense approach, not an approach that says, oh, humanity is responsible for killing the planet due to climate change, is the only way we'll get out of any mess.
I don't think I've got to say very much for this next section. I'll just let Connor crack on, shall I? Now, look, I introduced this piece earlier. I was saying we have the wrong type of wind in Wales, at least anyway, don't we? What is this all about? A wind turbine not coping with wind?
So there's a £20 million wind turbine in South Wales, and because of about 50-mile-an-hour wind last night at 6 in the morning, it collapsed and fell in half and crashed.
And only
out.
50 miles, actually. We're going to lose them all tonight, are we? The winds are about 90 miles an hour, I'm told.
Well, I was walking along the street earlier and I felt like I was going to be blown down, but obviously I'm not worth 20 million quid, so there's something significantly more dangerous about this. The concerning thing is, as well, we've had to turn off some of our wind turbines sometimes. I went to, during that big fiasco that was COP26, some friends and I at the British Conservation Alliance, we went to Whitley, the largest offshore wind farm in Scotland. I had a chat with all the engineers, the people that are actually doing things. And even they said, number one, wind isn't a completely reliable power source because it never makes up the energy that it costs to make the turbine in the first place.
Now, I've heard people say that's a myth, that's it. But basically, I remember someone very years ago saying to me, do you know what, we might as well just power that thing up off the grid without using wind power because these things are so
unreliable.
That's the word we were looking for.
Well, they have to shut them off in very severe wind as well sometimes because they can overheat, and sometimes they have to shut them off because if they generate too much power, there's nowhere to store it,
why
so
are we still
start fires.
Why are we still spending billions?
Because we're hoping to have some sort of energy independence. Now, there's a problem with how we fund it, right? There's been a lot of attention drawn recently about the green levies. About 15% of everyone's rising energy bills go on subsidising renewables. So that's building things like wind power and investing in the tech. The problem is, I did some numbers on this for the Adam Smith Institute a while ago. If we invested all the money we could in making Britain fully renewable on wind and solar alone, it would take all of the battery capacity from 2022 to 2029 just to store it all, right? It would cost £2.9 trillion, and even then it would make less than 20% of the energy we need every year, and it would have no protection against blackouts. So we're going to be cold, we're going to have no lights, we're going to be in debt, and the wind is still going to collapse some of the turbines if they're built like this one improperly. It's
to
completely
which
silly.
The charge would be made. But you're scaremongering, Connor, and you're scaremongering, and your what is it, Project Fear, you're going to do. But in reality, we're not talking just about wind power, are we? So we're told that we're going to be looking for all sorts of different sources of energy. How realistic is the plan? If you actually think Boris Johnson has got a plan, how realistic is his renewables energy strategy?
So the renewable strategy, I don't think is that wise, particularly because you've got problems with like the supply chains. So if you want to go to solar, for example, I mean, number one, it's not all that sunny in the country anyway. And even if climate change really does make us the tropics of the northern hemisphere, it's doubtful we're going to have the storage capacity again by 2050 to run us all on renewables. But where do you think you're buying all this lithium? Who do you think's manufacturing all the solar panels? Again, it's China. And that's coming out of a lot of the lithium mines in places like Afghanistan, where they just seized it, or a lot of the African places where they're using child labour. So it's not like a lot of the woke issues are often packed onto the green issues. But if you look at where a lot of the green stuff comes from, all of these claims that renewables are the future, well, they've got all sorts of human rights concerns that's never addressed. The only way we've got it is nuclear. So the government, upon some of the advice that I've given, are actually starting to put some more money into funding new nuclear plants. But the problem is Chinese money's still in that as well.
Why aren't we racing towards nuclear? Because I think I sense you're really saying, look, we're kind of starting to go down that road. Nuclear's clean, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, it's the only emissions involved are when you're building the plant and then when you're decommissioning it. And they're having longer life cycles as we go on. They're also looking into small modular reactors with less waste and a lot more power and bang for the buck. And then fusion, which is the other way of generating. Currently, you split an atom, you get energy from it. The other way of doing it is to fuse two atoms together and you basically make a mini sun and get the energy from that. A lab in Britain the other day made leaps and bounds. Powered about 60 kettles with it. That means unlimited energy. We don't rely on any other country again.
Let's just give them the money.
Well, this is the problem though. It's how you get that money in the first place. Because nuclear is really costly to build those plants. You've got to have a lot of money up front. They always go over budget, and so a lot of people don't want to secure it. That's why one plant in Wales fell through a little while ago. So that lost all the job opportunities, lost all the development costs, etc. So what we need to do is get money from different sources. At the moment, we're trying to government guarantee the loans, and that's letting a lot of people go abroad to China. And that's why I think China at the moment are one of the largest stakeholders in our energy sector. It's not very sustainable, and it's not nationally secure.
Very sound stuff coming from you there. Now, listen, I'm going to take you into an area I don't know if you know anything about or not, but you seem to be a very bright person, so I'm going to risk it. I have a electric car. I have it for the gadgets. I didn't go out and do it because it's green. I love gadgets. I just think they're amazing, and I drive this thing. I have lots of fun in it. And I wind people up by saying, well, there's my green credentials. You see, I'm on driving my little sporty car going around and around. They say to me they're not green at all, actually, and that it probably ate up more of the planet, according to them, having it made, and it will take years for it to be actually green. I mean, our electric cars, actually, apart from the fact we'll never have enough charge to charge them, are they really genuinely green vehicles?
Well, conceptually, they will be if they're all run on renewables eventually, but they're not. Also, again, same problems with where do you find the batteries, where do you get the material,
exactly.
Who's producing
people
them,
are saying the batteries to make them are pretty
well, they're very costly. So to replace the batteries, actually, there's been some people that the Tesla has about 8 years warranty.
Yes,
and rather than replacing the battery, they've just written off their Tesla right before the end of the warranty because it's cheaper to get the
Tesla
new one.
Were ripping them off. I know.
Exactly. So this is the supply line problem, it's the shipping problem, and it's the manufacturing problem. And also, how do you generate this energy? If we're going to have massive blackouts from renewables like wind power, say the plant falls over, or it even frosts up, they've had to put flamethrowers on helicopters to de-ice them, which is hilarious.
I'm not having you on again, Connor. I said you've just upset me. I think people who listen to me regularly know that I forked out for a small baby Model 3 Tesla, and I was being all sanctimonious, and then I start reading about all these problems.
They look very nice, at least there's that.
Well, I can get into it, at least given I'm 6'4". Listen, that was Connor Tomlinson joining me, of course.